Right, here we go. Just reading a bit of this twaddling here. Um, right, here we go. Right, where are we? Where are we? Just going to read a bit from this book here. Oh, right, we're getting here. We're getting there. Right, I'll start it. The next one, isn't it? Which is this one. Yeah, this is weather as a force multiplier. This is well, it says here, uh, this publication has been reviewed by Security and Policy Review Authorities, is unclassified, and is cleared for public release. Therefore, here we go with the 1996 paper, Weather as a Force Multiplier, a research paper presented to the Air Force. Blah, 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 various people. Right, disclaimer 2025, it's called, Owning the Weather by 2025. That's another title for it, I think. This is a bit messed up in this book. Anyway, 2025 is a study, just remember this was written in 1996, designed to comply with a directive from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force to examine the concepts, capabilities, and technologies the United States will require to remain the dominant air and space force in the future. Presented on the 17th of June 1996, this report was produced in the Department of Defense School Environment of Academic Freedom and in the interest of advancing concepts related to national defense. The views expressed in this report are those of the authors and do not reflect the official policy or position of the United States Air Force, Department of Defense, or the United States government, indeed. This report contains fictional representations of future situations, scenarios, etc. Any similarities to real people or events, other than those specifically cited, are unintentional and are for purposes of illustration only. This publication has been reviewed by Security and Policy Review Authorities, is unclassified, and cleared for public release. Acknowledgements. We express our appreciation to Mr. Mike McKim of Air War College. It's a nice name for a college, isn't it? But what college do you go to? Oh, I went to Air War College. Who provided a wealth of technical expertise and innovative ideas that significantly contributed to our paper. We are also especially grateful for the devoted support of our families during this research project. Their understanding and patience during the demanding research period were crucial to the project's success. Executive summary. In 2025, remember this was written in 1996, in 2025, US aerospace forces can own the weather, in inverted commas, by capitalizing on emerging technologies and focusing development of those technologies to warfighting applications. Such a capability offers the warfighter tools to shape the battle space in ways never before possible. It provides opportunities to impact operations across the full spectrum of conflict and is pertinent to all possible futures. The purpose of this paper is to outline a strategy for the use of a future weather modification system to achieve military objectives rather than to provide a detailed technical roadmap. A high-risk, high-reward endeavor, weather modification offers a dilemma not unlike the splitting of the atom. While some segments of society will always be reluctant to examine controversial issues such as weather modification, the tremendous military capabilities that could result from this field are ignored at our own peril. From enhancing friendly operations or disrupting those of the enemy via small-scale tailoring of natural weather patterns to complete dominance of global communications and counter-space control. Weather modification offers the warfighter a wide range of possible options to defeat or coerce an adversary. Some of the potential capabilities a weather modification system could provide to a war-fighting commander-in-chief are listed in Table 1. Technology advancements in 5 major areas are necessary for an integrated weather modification capability. Advanced non-linear modeling techniques, computational capability, information gathering and transmission, a global sensor array, and 5 weather intervention techniques. Some intervention tools exist today, and others may be developed and refined in the future. Operational capabilities. Matrix degrade enemy forces, enhance friendly forces, precipitation enhancement, flood lines of communication, reduce PGM, decrease comfort level, morale storm enhancement, deny operations precipitation denial. That's a really bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? That's what's written now. Deny fresh water, induce drought space weather, disrupt communications, radar disable, destroy space assets, fog and cloud removal, deny concealment, increase vulnerability, detect hostile weather activities, precipitation avoidance, maintain, improve, maintain visibility, maintain comfort level, morale storm modification, choose battle space environment, space weather, improve communication reliability, intercept enemy transmissions, revitalize space assets, fog and cloud generation, increase concealment, fog and cloud removal. Maintain airfield operations, enhance effectiveness, defend against enemy capabilities. Current technologies that will mature over the next 30 years will offer anybody who has the necessary resources the ability to modify weather patterns and their corresponding effects, at least on the local scale. Currently, demographic, economic, and environmental trends will create global stresses that provide the impetus necessary for many countries or groups to turn this weather modification ability into a capability. In the United States, weather modification will likely become a part of a national security policy with both domestic and international applications. Our government will pursue such a policy, depending on its interests, at various levels. These levels could include unilateral actions, participation in a security framework such as NATO, membership in an international organization such as the UN, or participation in a coalition. Assuming that in 2025 our national security strategy includes weather modification, its use in our national military strategy will naturally follow. Besides significant benefits, an operational capability will provide another motivation to pursue weather modification to deter counter potential adversaries. In this paper, we show that appropriate application of weather modification can provide battle space dominance to a degree never before imagined. In the future, such operations will enhance air and space superiority. Although not quality, obviously, not air quality anyway, and provide new options for battle space shaping and battle space awareness. The technology is there, waiting for us to pull it all together in 2025. We can own the weather. Notes the weather modification capability. Should have a dash there, but it hasn't got one. The weather modification capabilities described in this paper are consistent with the operating environments and missions relevant for aerospace forces in 2025, as defined by AFLR, a long-range planning office reporting to the CSAF, based on AFLR PowerPoint briefing, blah, 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 weather, a force multiplier, military review, November, December 1995. Blah, 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 blah. Imagine that in 2025, the US is fighting a rich but now consolidated, politically powerful drug cartel in South America. The cartel has purchased hundreds of Russian and Chinese-built fighters that have successfully thwarted our attempts to attack their production facilities. With their local numerical superiority and interior lines, the cartel is launching more than 10 aircraft for every one of ours. In addition, the cartel is using the French system probatoire d'observation de la Terre, positioning and tracking imagery systems, which in 2025 are capable of transmitting near real-time multispectral imagery with 1 meter resolution. The US wishes to engage the enemy on an uneven playing field in order to exploit the full potential of our aircraft and munitions. Meteorological analysis reveals that equatorial South America typically has afternoon thunderstorms on a daily basis throughout the year. Our intelligence has confirmed that cartel pilots are reluctant to fly in or near thunderstorms. Therefore, our weather force element, which is part of the Commander-in-Chief's Air Operations Center, is tasked to forecast storm paths and trigger or intensify thunderstorm cells over critical target areas that the enemy must defend with their aircraft. Since our aircraft in 2025 will have all-weather capability, the thunderstorm threat is minimal to our forces, and we can effectively and decisively control the sky over the target. We have the necessary sensor and communication capability to observe, detect, and act on weather modification requirements to support US military objectives. These capabilities are part of an advanced battle area system that supports the war-fighting Commander-in-Chief. In our scenario, the Commander-in-Chief tasks the war-fighting to conduct storm intensification and concealment operations. They model the atmospheric conditions to forecast with 90% confidence the likelihood of successful modification using airborne cloud regeneration and seeding. In 2025, uninhabited aerospace vehicles are routinely used for weather modification operations. By cross-referencing desired attack times with wind and thunderstorm forecasts and the satellite's projected orbit, generates mission profiles for each uninhabited aerospace vehicle. Blah, 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 blah. Prior to the attack, which is coordinated with forecasted weather conditions, the uninhabited, whatever they're called, aerospace vehicles begin cloud generation and seeding operations. They disperse a cirrus shield to deny enemy visual and infrared surveillance. Simultaneously, microwave heaters create localized scintillation to disrupt active sensing via synthetic aperture radar systems, such as the commercially available Canadian search and rescue satellite aided tracking that will be widely available in 2025. Other cloud seeding operations cause a developing thunderstorm to intensify over the target, severely limiting the enemy's capability to defend. We monitor the entire operation in real time and notes blah, 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 blah. The scenario may seem far-fetched, but by 2025, it is well within the realm of possibility. The next chapter explores the reasons for weather modification, defines the scope, and examines trends that will make it possible in the next 30 years. Remember, this was written in 1996. Why would we want to mess with the weather? According to General Gordon Sullivan, former Army Chief of Staff, as we leap technology into the 21st century, we will be able to, do the American accent, as we leap technology into the 21st century, we'll be able to see the enemy day or night in any weather and go after him relentlessly. A global, precise, real-time, robust, systematic weather modification capability would provide warfighting commanders-in-chief with a powerful force multiplier to achieve military objectives. Since weather modification will be common to all possible futures, a weather modification capability would be universally applicable and have utility across the entire spectrum of conflict. The capability of influencing the weather, even on a small scale, could change it from a force degrader to a force multiplier. People have always wanted to be able to do something about the weather. In the US, as early as 1839, two newspaper archives tell of people with serious and creative ideas on how to make rain. In 1957, the President's Advisory Committee on Weather Control explicitly recognized the military potential of weather modification, warning in their report that it could become a more important weapon than the atomic bomb. However, controversy since 1947 concerning the possible legal consequences arising from the deliberate alteration of large storm systems meant that little future experimentation could be conducted, which had the potential on certain storms which had the potential to reach land. In 1977, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution prohibiting the hostile use of environmental weather modification techniques. The resulting Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental weather modification techniques committed the signatories to refrain from any military or other hostile use of weather modification which could result in widespread, long-lasting, or severe effects. While these two events have not halted the pursuit of weather modification research, they have significantly inhibited its pace and the development of associated technologies while reducing a primary focus on suppressive versus intensification activities. The influence of the weather on military operations has long been recognized. During World War II, I suppose, Eisenhower said, in Europe, bad weather is the worst enemy of the air operations. Some soldier once said, the weather is always neutral. Nothing could be more untrue. Bad weather is obviously the enemy of the side that seeks to launch projects requiring good weather, or of the side possessing great assets such as strong air forces which depend upon good weather for effective operations. If really bad weather should endure permanently, the Nazi would need nothing else to defend the Normandy coast. The impact of weather has also been important in more recent military operations. A significant number of the air sorties into Tuzla during the initial deployment supporting the Bosnian peace operation was aborted due to weather. During Operation Desert Storm, General Buster C. Glosson asked his weather officer to tell him which targets would be clear in 48 hours for inclusion in the air tasking order. But current forecasting capability is only 85% accurate for no more than 24 hours. Remember, this was in 1996 when this paper was written, which doesn't adequately meet the needs of the planning cycle. Over 50% of the F-117 sorties weather aborted over their targets, and A-10s only flew 75 of 200 scheduled close air support missions due to low cloud cover during the first 2 days of the campaign. The application of weather modification technology to clear a hole over the targets long enough for the F-117s to attack and place bombs on target or clear the fog from the runway at Tuzla would have been a very effective force multiplier. Weather modification clearly has a potential for military use at the operational level to reduce the elements of fog and friction for friendly operations and to significantly increase them for the enemy. What do we mean by weather modification? Today, weather modification is the alteration of weather phenomena over a limited area for a limited period of time. Within the next 3 decades, the concept of weather modification could expand to include the ability to shape weather patterns by influencing their determining factors. Achieving such a highly accurate and reasonably precise weather modification capability in the next 30 years will require overcoming some challenging but not insurmountable technological and legal hurdles. Technologically, we must have a solid understanding of the variables that affect weather. We must be able to model the dynamics of their relationships, map the possible results of their interactions, measure their actual real-time values, and influence their values to achieve a desired outcome. Society will have to provide the resources and legal basis for a mature capability to develop. How could all of this happen? The following notional scenario postulates how weather modification might become both technically feasible and socially desirable by 2025. Between now and 2025, remember this was written in 1996, technological advances in meteorology and demand for more meteorology and the demand for more precise weather information by global businesses will lead to the successful identification and parameterization of the major variables that affect weather. By 2015, advances in computational capability, modeling techniques, and atmospheric information tracking will produce a highly accurate and reliable weather prediction capability, validated against real-world weather. In the following decade, to 2025, that is, population densities put pressure on the worldwide availability and cost of food and usable water. Massive life and property losses associated with natural weather disasters become increasingly unacceptable. These pressures prompt governments and or other organizations who are able to capitalize on the technological advances of the previous 20 years to pursue a highly accurate and reasonably precise weather modification capability. The increasing urgency to realize the benefits of this capability stimulates laws and treaties and some unilateral actions, making the risks required to validate and refine it acceptable. By 2025, the world or parts of it are able to shape local weather patterns by influencing the factors that affect climate, precipitation, storms, and their effects, fog, and near space. These highly accurate and reasonably precise civil applications of weather modification technology have obvious military implications. This is particularly true for aerospace forces, for while weather may affect all mediums of operation, it operates in ours. The term weather modification may have negative connotations for many people, civilians and military members alike. It is thus important to define the scope and brainwash the people that it's really important. And I put those bits in. Define the scope to be considered in this paper so that potential critics or proponents of further research have a common basis for discussion, and nothing but the common basis. Sorry, I'll put them in. In the broadcast sense, in the broadest sense, weather modification can be divided into two major categories: suppression and intensification of weather patterns. In extreme cases, it might involve the creation of completely new weather patterns, attenuation or control of severe storms, or even alteration of global climate on a far-reaching and or long-lasting scale. In the mildest and least controversial cases, it may consist of inducing or suppressing precipitation just a little bit, clouds or fog for short times over a small-scale region. How nice of them. Other low-intensity applications might include the alteration and or use of near space as a medium to enhance communications, disrupt active or passive sensing, or other purposes. In conducting the research for this study, the broadest possible interpretation of weather modification was initially embraced so that the widest range of opportunities available for our military by 2025 would be thoughtfully considered. However, for several reasons described below, this paper focuses primarily on localized and short-term forms of weather modification and on how these could be incorporated into war-fighting capability. You're not talking about weather warfare, are they? Surely not. Yes, they are. The primary areas discussed include generation and dissipation of precipitation, clouds, and fog, modification of localized storm systems, and the use of the ionosphere and near space for space control and communications dominance. These applications are consistent with meteorological and oceanographic operations. Extreme and controversial examples of weather modification, creation of made-to-order weather, large-scale climate modification, creation or control or steering of severe storms, etc., were researched as part of this study, but receive only brief mention here because, in the author's judgment, the 12 technical obstacles preventing their application appear insurmountable within 30 years. If this were not the case, such applications would have been included in this report as potential military operations, despite their controversial and potentially malevolent nature and their inconsistency with standing UN agreements to which the US is a signatory. On the other hand, the weather modification application proposed in this report range from technically proven to potentially feasible. They are similar, however, in that none are currently employed or envisioned for employment by our operational forces. Well, that's nice to know, isn't it? They are also similar in their potential value for the warfighter of the future. As we hope to convey in the following chapters, a notional integrated system that incorporates weather modification tools will be described in the next chapter. How those tools might be applied are then discussed within the framework of the concept of operations. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it goes on and on and on and on. Here we go. System description. Our vision is that by 2025, remember this was written in 1996, the military could influence the weather on a mesoscale or microscale, immediate local area to achieve operational capabilities such as those listed in Table 1. The capability would be the synergistic result of a system consisting of highly trained weather force specialists who are members of the Commander-in-Chief's Weather Force Support Element, access ports to the global weather network, where worldwide weather observation and forecasts are obtained near real time from civilian and military sources. A dense, highly accurate local area weather sensing and communication system, and advanced computer local area weather modification, modeling and prediction capability within the area of responsibility, proven weather modification intervention technologies, and a feedback capability. The headline coming up. Let's have a quick swig of it all down. Well, corporation tap water. No, actually, it was filtered, but it is called corporation tap water. Provided by the private company, water company, of course. Well, I'm going to skip this bit because it's very There we go. Evidence of the evolving future weather modeling and prediction capability can be seen in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, 1995 to 2005 strategic plan. Includes program elements to advance short-term warning and forecast services, implement seasonal to interannual climate forecasts, and implements and predict and assess decadal to centennial change. So they can predict the weather in 100 years' time. How thrilling. It does not, however, include plans for weather modification, modeling, or modification technology development. NOAA's plans include extensive data gathering programs such as Next Generation Radar, or NEXRAD, and Doppler weather surveillance systems deployed throughout the US. Data from these sensing systems feed into over 100 forecast centers for processing by the Advanced Weather Interactive Processing System, which will provide data communication, processing, and display capabilities for extensive forecasting. You sure they're not scheduling or scheduling it? In addition, NOAA has leased a Cray 90 supercomputer capable of performing over 1.5 times whatever it is, operation, blah, 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 per second, and has already been power of God knows what per second, blah, 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 already been used, right, and has already been used to run a hurricane prediction system. How will the military in general and the US Air Force in particular manage and employ a weather modification capability? We envisage this will be done by the Weather Force support element, whose primary mission would be to support the warfighting Commander-in-Chief with weather modification options in addition to current forecasting support. Although the Weather Force support element could operate anywhere as long as it has access to the global weather network and the system components already discussed, it will more than likely be a component within the blah, 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 blah. Okay. The options include range of effect, probability of success, resources to be expended, the enemy's vulnerability and risks involved. Blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on and on. A bum-numbing length. Rather like my broadcast here, but it is exactly as written there enough. I'll have to skip bits of it because it's completely tedious. Right, here we go. The essential ingredient of weather modification techniques used to modify the weather. The number of specific intervention methodologies is limited only by the imagination. Oh. But with few exceptions, they involved infusing either energy or chemicals into the meteorological process in the right way, at the right place and time. The intervention could be designed to modify the weather in a number of ways, such as influencing clouds or precipitation, storm intensity, climate, space, or even fog. For centuries, man has desired the ability to influence precipitation at the time and place of his choosing. Until recently, success in achieving this goal has been minimal. However, a new window of opportunity may exist resulting from a development of new technologies and increasing world interest in relieving water shortages through precipitation enhancement. Consequently, we advocate that the DoD explore the many opportunities and also their ramifications, resulting from development of a capability to influence precipitation or conducting selective precipitation modification. Although the capability to here we go. Where are we now? Oh dear. Skip the page to Oh, this is just complete. What goes on and on and on. Right. Only further experimentation will determine what degree precipitation enhancement can be controlled. If precipitation enhancement techniques are successfully developed and the right natural conditions also exist, we must also be able to disperse carbon dust into the desired location. Transporting it in a completely controlled, safe, cost-effective and reliable manner requires innovation. Numerous dispersal techniques have already been studied, but the most convenient, safe and cost-effective method discussed is the use of afterburner-type jet engines to generate carbon particles while flying through the targeted air. This method is based on injection of liquid hydrocarbon fuel into the afterburner's combustion gases. This direct generation method was found to be more considerable, more desirable than another plausible method
i.e. the transport of large quantities of previously produced and properly sized carbon dust to the desired altitudes. The carbon dust study demonstrated that small-scale precipitation enhancement is possible and has been successfully verified under certain atmospheric conditions. Since the study was conducted, no known military applications of this technology have been realised. Okay, however, we can postulate now that this technology might be used in the future by examining some of the delivery platforms conceivably available for effective disposal of carbon dust or other effective modification agents by the year 2025. One method we propose would further maximise the technology's safety and reliability by virtually eliminating the human element. Oh yeah, eliminate the humans. That's a good idea, isn't it, eh? Today, much work has been done on UAVs, which can closely, if not completely, match the capabilities of piloted aircraft. You know, those flown by Burks in uniforms. Uh, uh, and whatever. Right, okay. If not completely, match the capabilities of a piloted aircraft. If this uninhabited vehicle technology were combined with stealth and carbon dust technologies, the result could be a UAV aircraft invisible to radar while out en route to the targeted area, which could spontaneously create carbon dust in any location. However, minimising the number of UAVs required to complete the mission would depend upon the development of a new and more efficient system to produce carbon dust by follow-on technology to the afterburner type jet engines previously mentioned. In order to effectively use stealth technology, this system must also have the ability to disperse carbon dust while minimizing or eliminating the UAV's infrared heat source. In addition to using stealth UAV and carbon dust absorption technology for precipitation enhancement, this delivery method could also be used for precipitation suppression. Although the previously mentioned study did not significantly explore the possibility of cloud seeding for precipitation suppression, this possibility does exist if clouds were seeded using chemical nuclei similar to those used today, or perhaps a more effective agent discovered through continued research before their downwind arrival to a desired location. The result could be a suppression of the precipitation. In other words, precipitation could be forced to fall before its arrival in the desired territory, therefore making the desired territory dry. The strategic and operational benefits of doing this have been previously discussed. In general, successful fog dissipation requires some type of heating or seeding process. Which technique works best depends upon the type of fog encountered. In simple terms, there are two basic types of fog: cold and warm fog. Cold fog occurs at temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The best known fog dissipation technique for cold fog is to seed it from the air with agents that promote the growth of ice crystals. Warm fog occurs at temperatures above 32 degrees Fahrenheit and accounts for 90% of fog-related problems encountered by uh, right, sorry. Sorry, I lost it then. Because nobody is listening. It doesn't matter. Because people can always you know, go back to this wonderful bit of complete and utter total twaddle from our military governors and military brains, you know. Anyway, here we go. Cold fog occurs at temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The best known dissipation technique for cold fog is to seed it from the air with agents that promote the growth of ice crystals. Warm fog occurs at temperatures above 32 degrees Fahrenheit and accounts for 90% of the fog-related problems encountered by flight operations. The best known dissipation technique is heating, because a small temperature increase is usually sufficient to evaporate the fog. Since heating usually isn't practical, the next most effective technique is hydroscopic seeding. Hydroscopic seeding uses agents that absorb water vapor. This technique is most effective when accomplished from the air, but can also be accomplished from the ground. Optimal results require advanced information on fog depth, liquid water content, and wind. Decades of research show that fog dissipation is an effective application of weather modification technology, with demonstrated savings of huge proportions for both military and civil aviation. Local municipalities have also shown an interest in applying these techniques to improve the safety of high-speed highways, transiting areas of frequently occurring dense fog. There are some emerging technologies which may have important application for fog dispersal. As discussed earlier, heating is the most effective dispersal method for the most commonly occurring types of fog. Unfortunately, it has been proved impractical for most situations and would be difficult at best for contingency operations. However, the development of directed radiant energy technologies such as microwaves and lasers could provide new possibilities, such such lab experiments have shown microwaves to be effective for for the heat dissipation of fog. However, results also indicate that the energy levels required exceed the US large power density exposure limit of 113 watts M2. I don't know what that means. Too bloody complicated, anyway. Anyway, and would be very expensive. Okay. Field experiments. Okay. Growing carrots or beetroot. Oh no, sorry. Field on the field of battle, or in the field of science, in the field of aeronautics. Field experiments with lasers have demonstrated the capability to dissipate warm fog at an airfield with zero visibility, generating 1 watt per centimeter, which is approximately the US bloody, it's getting my nerves. Right, with regard to seeding techniques, improvements in the materials and delivery methods are not only plausible but currently being developed with gigaops computer. Gigaops, what a stupid word that is. Computer capability at their core. How thrilling. They could adjust their size to optimal dimensions for a given fog seeding situation and even make adjustments throughout the process. They might also enhance their dispersal qualities by adjusting their buoyancy, by communicating with each other, and by steering themselves within the fog. They will be able to provide immediate and continuous effectiveness feedback by integrating with a larger sensor network, and can also change their temperature and polarity to improve their seeding effects. As mentioned above,
Uninhabited vehicles could be used to deliver and distribute these smart materials. Recent Army Research Lab experiments have demonstrated the feasibility of generating fog. They used commercial equipment to generate thick fog in an area 100 meters long. Further study has shown fogs to be effective at blocking much of the visible spectrum, effectively masking emitters of such radiation from infrared weapons. This technology would enable a small military unit to avoid detection in the infrared spectrum. Fog could be generated too quickly. Fog could be generated too quickly, conceal the movement of tanks and infantry, or could conceal military operation facilities or equipment. Such systems may also be useful in inhibiting observations of sensitive rear area operations by President Trump. Electro-optical reconnaissance platforms. The desirability to modify storms to support military objectives is the most aggressive and controversial type of weather modification. The damage caused by storms is indeed horrendous. For instance, a tropical storm has an energy equal to 10,001 megaton hydrogen bombs. And in 1992, Hurricane Andrew totally destroyed parts of Florida, caused the evacuation of most military aircraft in the southeastern US, and resulted in $15.5 billion worth of damage. However, as one would expect, based on a storm's energy level, current scientific literature indicates that there where are we? Sorry, I've lost my place. I'm getting tired out with this shit. However, as one would expect, based on a storm's energy level, current scientific literature indicates that there are definite physical limits on mankind's ability to modify storm systems. By taking this into account, along with political, environmental, economic, legal, and moral considerations, we will confine our analysis of storms to localized thunderstorms, and thus do not consider major storm systems such as hurricanes or intense low-pressure systems. At any instant, there are approximately 2,000 thunderstorms taking place. In fact, 45,000 thunderstorms, 20 of which contain heavy rain, hail, microbursts, wind shear, and lightning, form every day. Anyone who has flown frequently on commercial aircraft has probably noticed the extremes that pilots will go to avoid thunderstorms. The danger of thunderstorms was clearly shown in August 1985 when a jumbo jet crashed, killing unfortunately 21 killing 137 people after encountering wind shears during a rain squall. These forces of nature impact all aircraft, and even the most advanced fighters of 1996 make every attempt to avoid a thunderstorm. Remember, this report was written in 1996, and this is Owning the Weather by 2025, their newspaper I'm reading for whoever's joined. Anyway, the answer, unfortunately, will bad weather remain an aviation hazard in 2025? The answer, unfortunately, is yes, but projected advances in technology over the next 30 years will diminish the hazard potential. Computer-controlled flight systems will be able to autopilot aircraft through rapidly changing winds. Aircraft will also have highly accurate onboard sensing systems that can instantaneously map and automatically guide the aircraft through the safest portion of a storm cell. Aircraft are envisioned to have hardened electronics that can withstand the effects of lightning strikes and may also have the capability to generate surrounding electropotential field that will neutralize or repel lightning strikes. Okay? Assuming that the US achieves some or all of the above outlined aircraft technological advantages and maintains the technological uh, weather edge over its potential adversaries, we can next look at how we could modify the battle space weather to make the best use of our technical advantage. Weather modification technologies might involve techniques that would increase latent heat release in the atmosphere, provide additional water vapor for cloud cell development, and provide additional surface and lower atmospheric heating to increase atmospheric instability. Critical to the success of any attempt to trigger a storm is the pre existing atmospheric conditions locally and regionally. The atmosphere must directly be conditionally unstable, and the large scale dynamics must be supportive of vertical cloud development. The focus of the weather modification effort would be to provide additional conditions that would make the atmosphere unstable enough to generate cloud and eventually storm cell development. The path of storm cells, once developed or enhanced, is dependent not only on the mesoscale dynamics of the storm, but the regional and synoptic global scale atmospheric wind flow patterns in the area, which are currently not subject to human control except by President Trump. Oh, pardon me. As indicated, the technical hurdles for storm development in support of military operations are obviously greater than enhancing precipitation or dispersing fog, as described earlier. One area of storm research that would significantly benefit military operations is lightning modification.
Most research efforts are being conducted to develop techniques to lessen the occurrence or hazards associated with lightning. This is important research for military operations and resource protection, but some offensive military benefit could be obtained by doing research on increasing the potential and intensity of lightning. Concepts to explore include increasing the basic efficiency of the thunderstorm, stimulating the triggering mechanism that initiates the thunderbolt, and triggering lightning such as that which struck Apollo 12 in 1968. Possible mechanisms to investigate would always be to modify the electrical potential characteristics over certain targets to induce lightning strikes on the desired targets as the storm passes over their location. In summary, the ability to modify space weather through storm cell triggering or enhancement would allow us to exploit the technological weather advances of our 2025 aircraft. This area has tremendous potential and should be addressed by future research and conceptual developmental programs. This section discusses opportunities for control and modification of the ionosphere and near space environment for force enhancement, specifically to enhance our own communications, sensing and navigation capabilities or impair those of our enemies. A brief technical description of the ionosphere and its importance in current communication systems is provided in Appendix A. By 2025, it may be possible to modify the ionosphere and near space, creating a variety of potential applications as discussed below. However, before ionospheric modification becomes possible, a number of evolutionary advances in space weather forecasting
and observation are required. Many of these needs were described in a Spacecast 2020 study. space weather support for communications. Some of the suggestions from this study are included in the appendix. Oh, yeah, I've had my appendix out recently, but never mind that. Anyway, it is very important to note that our ability to exploit near space via active modification is dependent on successfully achieving reliable observation and prediction capabilities. Modification of the near space environment is crucial to battle space dominance. General Charles Horner, former Commander-in-Chief, United States Space Command, described his worst nightmare as seeing an entire Marine battalion wiped out on some foreign land zone because he was unable to deny the enemy intelligence and imagery generated from space. Active modification could provide a technological fix to jam the enemy's active and passive surveillance and reconnaissance systems. In short, an operation capability to modify the near space environment would ensure space superiority in 2025. This capability would allow us to shape and control the battle space via enhanced communication, sensing, navigation, precision engagement systems. While we recognise that technological advances may negate the importance of certain electromagnetic frequencies for US aerospace forces in 2025, such as radio frequency, high frequency and very high frequency bands, the capabilities described below are nevertheless relevant. Our non-peer adversaries will most likely still depend on such frequency for communications, sensing and navigation, and will thus be extremely vulnerable to disruption via space weather modification. Modification of the atmosphere to enhance or disrupt communications has recently become the subject of active research. According to Lewis M. Duncan and Robert L. Snowin, the former Soviet Union conducted theoretical and experimental research in this area at a level considerably greater than comparable programs in the West. There is a strong motivation for this research because induced ionospheric modifications may influence or even disrupt the operation of radio systems relying on propagation through the modified region. The controlled generation or acceleration dissipation of ionospheric disturbances may be used to produce a new propagation paths, otherwise unavailable, appropriate for selective radio frequency emissions. A number of methods have been explored or proposed to modify the ionospheres, including injection of chemical vapors and heating or charging via electromagnetic radiation or particle beams such as ions, neutral particles, X-rays, and energetic electrons, etc., etc. It is important to note that many techniques to modify the upper atmosphere have been successfully demonstrated experimentally. Ground-based modification techniques employed by the FSU include vertical high-frequency heating, oblique high-frequency heating, microwave heating, and magnetosphere modification. Significant military applications of such operations include low-frequency communications, high-frequency ducted communications, and creation of an artificial ionosphere discussed in detail below. Moreover, developing countries also recognized the benefit of ionospheric modification. In the early 1980s, Brazil conducted an experiment to modify the ionosphere by chemical injection. Several high payoff capabilities that could result from the modification of the ionosphere or the near space are described briefly below. It should be emphasized that this list is not comprehensive. Modification of the ionosphere is an area rich with potential applications. I'm going to have to stop here now because my battery's 1%. So I'll just plug it back in the plonker here, in the mains, see if it See if it goes. Oh yes, it's charging, so it might keep us on. Then again, we might just flip off because I'm so low on battery. But it is appearing to be charging. Do you want me to carry on? This is terrible, terrible reading. I've just had to change my accent because it got so boring, so I started doing various accents. Anyway, how are you, my dear? And did you have a lovely birthday yesterday? Just gone birthday hour, isn't it? Yeah. Nobody's tuned into this, but it's quite interesting. I've done quite a lot of it. I've done an hour of it. It's absolute burble. There's loads more pages of it left. Buckets of it, absolutely buckets. It's it's frightening stuff, really. It's just crazy, it's absolutely crazy. And this is written in 2016. This paper, and about for the forecasting what they'll be able to do by 2025, owning the weather by 2025, basically, it's known as. And this is the thing, it's not unclassified, so it's been cleared for classification, so therefore I'm reading it, so there. They can't tell me off, can they? Yeah, anyway. It's just great, so much crazy stuff in it, honestly. It's just mad as anything. Alright, let's have a look at where they're going on about the enemy and stuff like that. Oh, here we go. Right. A pilot program known as Project Popeye, which we all know about, conducted in 1966, attempted to extend the monsoon season in order to increase the amount of mud on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, thereby reducing enemy movements. A silver iodide nuclei agent was dispersed from WC-130s, F-4 and A-1E aircraft into the clouds over Vietnam, blah, 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 blah. They led to continued programs from 1967 to 72. While the effects of this program remain disputed, some scientists believe it resulted in a significant reduction in the enemy's ability to bring supplies to South Vietnam along the trail. I'm not bloody surprised we get bogged down in all that bloody crap. To fully appreciate the development of the specific operational capabilities weather modification could deliver to the warfighter, we must examine and understand their relationship to associated core competencies and the development of their requisite technologies. Figure 5.1 combines specific operational capabilities of Table 1 into 6 core capabilities and depicts their relative importance over time. Isn't that wonderful? It's almost poetry, this. It's absolutely ridiculous crap, this, honestly. For example, fog and cloud modification are currently important and will remain so for some time to come to conceal our assets from surveillance or improve landing visibility at airfields. However, as surveillance assets become less optically dependent, hello there, Jenny. Nice to see you. Don't know if Lynn's still there, but I'm okay, I guess. Just about. Anyway, however, as surveillance assets become less optically dependent and aircraft achieve truly global all-weather landing capability, fog and cloud modification applications become less important. In contrast, artificial weather technologies do not currently exist. This is in 1996 when this was written. But as they are developed, the importance of their potential applications rises rapidly. For example, the anticipated proliferation of surveillance technologies in the future will make the ability to deny surveillance increasingly valuable. In such an environment, clouds made of smart particles, such as described in Chapter 4,
could provide a premium capability. Even today's most technologically advanced militaries would usually prefer to fight in clear weather and blue skies. But as warfighting technologies proliferate, the side with the technological advantage will prefer to fight in weather that gives them an edge. The US Army has already alluded to this approach in their concept of owning the weather. Accordingly, storm modification will become more valuable over time. The importance of precipitation modification is also likely to increase as usable water resources become more scarce in volatile parts of the world. As more countries pursue, develop, and exploit increasing types and degrees of weather modification technologies, we must be able to detect their efforts and counter their activities when necessary. As depicted, the technologicals and capabilities associated with such a counter-weather role will become increasingly important. The importance of space weather modification will grow in time. Its rise will become rapid at first, as the technologies it can best support or negate proliferate at their fastest rates. Later, as those technologies mature or become obsolete, the importance of space weather modification will continue to rise, but not as rapidly to achieve the core capabilities depicted in Figure 5. The necessary technologies and systems might be developed according to the process depicted in this figure. It illustrates the system's development, timing, and sequence necessary to realize a weather modification capability for the battle space by 2025. The horizontal axis represents time. The vertical axis indicates the degree to which a given technology will be applied toward weather modification. As the primary users, the military will be the main developer for the technologies designated with an asterisk. The civil sector will be the main source for the remaining technologies. The world's finite resources and continued needs will drive the desire to protect people and property. Oh, how nice of them. And more efficiently use our croplands. How nice of them. Forests and rangelands. How beautiful. The ability to modify the weather may be desirable both for economic and defense reasons. Oh, how lovely. Oh, it sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Idyllic. The spheres or bubbles. What? Hang on. The global weather systems has been described as a series of spheres or bubbles. Pushing down on one causes another to pop up. We need to know when another power pushes on a sphere in their region. I'm pushing on a sphere in my region at the moment, unbeknownst to the cameras. And how that will affect either our own territorial backsides or areas of economic and political interest to the US backside in general, especially Presidents Trump, Biden, and etc. Efforts are already underway to create more comprehensive weather models, primarily to improve forecasts. But researchers are also trying to influence the results of these models by adding small amounts of energy at just the right time and space. These programs are extremely limited at the moment and are not yet validated. But there is great potential to improve them in the next 30 years by 2025. The lessons of history indicate a real weather modification capability will eventually exist despite this very minute risk. No, despite the risk. The drive exists. Ooh, that's a sentence in itself. The drive exists.
Yeah, that's all it says. Full stop. People have always wanted to control the weather, especially Granny when she's going out shopping for the kippers and the, the pretzels and stuff. And their desire will compel them to collectively and continuously pursue their goal. The motivation exists, lots of money, loads of money. The potential benefits and power are extremely lucrative and alluring for those who have the resources to develop it. This combination of drive, motivation, resources, and profit will eventually produce the technology. History also teaches that we cannot afford to be without a weather modification capability once the technology is developed and used by others. There's the paranoia of the Russian bear coming in. We've got to get out. It's a kind of nuclear arms race, but a weather arms race going on there, isn't there? Right. Even if we have no intention of using it, others will. Will they? Well, maybe they'll have no intention of using it as well. Of course, they're all intending to use it, and they're all bloody well using it, aren't they? Well, anyway, this is whatever. To call upon the atomic weapon analogy again, we need to be able to deter or counter their capability with our own. If they've got an H-bomb, we've got to have an H-bomb. If they're testing one tomorrow, then we're testing one the next day, etc., etc., etc. Therefore, the weather and intelligence communities must keep abreast of the actions of others. As the preceding chapters have shown, weather modification is a force multiplier with tremendous power that could be exploited across the full spectrum of war-fighting environments, from enhancing friendly operations to disrupting those of the enemy via small-scale tailoring, bit of Savile Row tailoring there, of natural weather patterns to complete dominance of global communications and counter space control. Weather modification offers the warfighter a wide range of possible options to defeat or coerce an adversary. But while offensive weather modification efforts would certainly be undertaken by US forces with great caution and trepidation, it is clear that we cannot afford to allow an adversary to obtain an exclusive weather modification capability. The ionosphere is the part of the Earth's atmosphere beginning at an altitude of about 30 miles and extending outward 1,200 miles or more. This region consists of layers of free electrically charged particles that transmit, refract, and reflect radio waves, allowing those waves to be transmitted great distances around the globe. The interaction of the ionosphere on impinging electromagnetic radiation depends upon the properties of the ionospheric layer, the geometry of transmission, and the frequency of the radiation. For any given signal path through the atmosphere, a range of workable frequency band exists. This range between the maximum usable frequency and the lowest usable frequency is where radio waves are reflected and refracted by the ionosphere, much as a partial mirror may reflect or refract visible light. The reflective and refractive properties of the ionosphere provide a means to transmit radio signals beyond line of sight transmission between a transmitter and receiver. Ionospheric reflection and refraction has therefore been used almost exclusively for long-range, high-frequency communications. Radio waves with frequencies ranging from above 30 MHz to 300 GHz are usually used for communications requiring line-of-sight transmissions, such as satellite communications, At these higher frequencies, radio waves propagate through the ionosphere with only a small fraction of the wave scattering back into a pattern analogous to a sky wave. Communicators receive significant benefit from using these frequencies since they provide considerably greater bandwidths and thus have greater data carrying capacity. They are also less prone to natural interference or noise. Although the ionosphere acts as a natural mirror for high-frequency radio waves, it is in a constant state of flux, and thus its mirror property can be limited at times, like terrestrial weather. Ionospheric properties change from year to year, from day to day, and even from hour to hour. This ionospheric variability, called space weather, can cause unreliability in ground and space-based communications that depend on ionospheric reflection or transmission. Space weather variability affects how the ionosphere attenuates, absorbs, reflects, refracts, and changes the propagation, phase, and amplitude characteristics of radio waves. These weather-dependent changes may arise from certain space weather conditions, such as variability of solar radiation entering the upper atmosphere, the solar plasma entering the Earth's magnetic field, the gravitational atmospheric tides produced by the sun and moon, the vertical swelling of the atmosphere due to daytime heating of the sun. Space weather is also significantly affected by solar flare activity, the tilt of the Earth's geomagnetic field, and abrupt ionospheric changes resulting from events such as geomagnetic storms. In summary, the ionosphere's inherent reflectivity is a natural gift that humans have used to create long-range communications connecting distant points on the globe. However, natural variability in the ionosphere reduces the reliability of our communication systems that depend on ionospheric reflection and refraction, primarily high frequency. For the most part, higher frequency communications, such as UHF, that's ultra high frequency, or super high frequency, and EHF bands, are transmitted through the ionosphere without distortion. However, these bands are also subject to degradation caused by ionospheric scintillation, a phenomenon induced by abrupt variations in electron density along the signal path, resulting in signal fade caused by rapid signal path variations and defocusing of the signal's amplitude or phase. Understanding or predicting ionospheric variability and its influence on the transmission and reflection of electromagnetic radiation has been a much studied field of scientific inquiry. Improving our ability to observe, model, and forecast space weather will substantially improve our communication systems, both ground and space-based. Considerable work is being conducted both within the Department of Defense and the commercial sector on improving observation, modeling, and forecasting of space weather. While considerable technical challenges remain, we assume for the purposes of this study that dramatic improvements will occur in these areas over the next several decades. According to a Spacecast 2020 study titled Space Weather Support for Communications, the major factors limiting our ability to observe and accurately forecast space weather are current ionospheric sensing capability, density and frequency of ionospheric, blah, 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 blah. Oh, God. The report recommends that improvements be realized in our ability to measure the blah, 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 blah. This is really boring. Right. Anyway. Understanding and predicting ionospheric scintillation would also require launching of an equatorial remote sensing satellite, in addition to the currently planned or deployed Department of Defense and commercial constellations. The payoff of such a system is an improvement in ionospheric forecasting accuracy from the current range of 40 to 60% to an anticipated 80 to 100% accuracy. Daily worldwide ionospheric mapping would provide the data required to accurately forecast diurnal worldwide terrestrial propagation characteristics of electromagnetic energy from 3 to 300 millihertz.
This improved forecasting would assist satellite operators and users, resulting in enhanced operation and efficiency of space systems. It would also provide an order of magnitudinal improvement in locating the sources of tactical radio communications, allowing for location and tracking of enemy and friendly platforms.
Improved capability to forecast ionospheric scintillation would provide a means to improve communications reliability by the use of alternate ray paths or delay to undisturbed regions. It would also enable operational users to ascertain whether outages were due to naturally occurring ionospheric variability as opposed to enemy action or hardware problems. These advances in ionospheric observation, modeling, and prediction would enhance the reliability and robustness of our military communications network, in addition to their significant benefits for our existing communications networks. Such advances are also requisite to further exploitation of the ionosphere via active modification of the weather. Yeah. Taken more seriously than it was back then, probably because society continues to be. Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. Right, here we go. I think that's. Yeah, that was. I think I've come to the end of that report. Anyway. Right. I think I've had enough. I think everyone else has had enough. Someone's still hanging on. Probably someone from MI 3 3/3, 3 3/4, whatever it is. 3 3/8. I've got my. I've got my MVQ2. Not very quick to grasp the full enormity of climate engineering and all its nefarious activities. But there we go, you see. I'm not qualified to say, but I think they're. Well, actually, I'm qualified to say, I think, because I've observed using a technique known as observation, and I've been looking at the skies for years, and I do not like what I see, and I don't like what I read in that paper, which was written back in 1996, predicting that they would have the capability of owning the weather, e.g. controlling the whole of the world's weather by the year 2025, which we're only 2 years away from. And recently, they've still been denying that they're even doing any climate engineering. They're saying it's still on the cards as only a proposal. What a joke. We see all these ridiculous cloud formations, ridiculous upside down rainbows, sun halos all over the place, absolutely zero blue sky, zero sunshine most of the year, and hardly any proper real rain. It's just that piddling stuff, the little fine stuff that comes down, and the really fine snow, or the bobbly snow that's like lots of styrofoam, whatever you call it, stone packaging material, stuff you get in a bean bag. If you emptied one of those, loads of bubbles. And, you know, it's not natural at all, not something you should be considering ingesting or, you know, having your kids play out in, really, particularly. I suppose they can make snowballs with gloves on and snowmen and stuff like that, I guess, and trudge around in it. But have you ever noticed that when you're making a snowball, if you try and make one, it doesn't squeak anymore because of the surfactants in the snow. The surfactants are kind of like they're an ingredient of soap. So what they're doing is they're kind of separating the molecules. So there's no friction. There's lack of friction because it's all soapy. So there's no squeak when you're walking in deep snow. You don't hear a squeak. You don't hear a like you used to do. And you don't hear that when you're crushing a snowball up in your hand. And then when you roll it, it won't stick together because the surfactants. Because it's separating the particles. Get the idea? Anyway, there we go. That's about it now. So I'm going to say good night, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed that incredible, monstrous, rather, mind-boggling read, really. The amount of twaddle and energy and you know, the amount of research and twiddling around with all this, you know, the amount of money got involved in just writing a paper like that, you know, just writing such twaddle. I mean, you know, and theorizing on it, you know, working it all out in the old slide rules and the computers and the software and the NextRad and you know the Doppler radar and the chemistry and all this to research, all to destroy things rather than create, you know, and enhance the world. They're just destroying it. It's so sad. Anyway, there we are. You know. So we're up against one there, aren't we? The mighty military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us of in his goodbye speech to Congress way back in, what was it, 1958, somewhere around there? I'm not sure. Can't remember. I'm 61, I don't know. Can't remember. Anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter. Anyway, there we go. Cheers and good